This is Juan Brown with your Tuesday 21 February update on the situation at Oroville. Just got done watching the Department of Public Works press conference, and see if I can help translate what Bill said today and show some of the images that illustrate some of the things he's talking about. Yesterday, after the press briefing, by the way, they mentioned at the end of this is going to be the last press briefing unless things change. So to me, that's a good sign. Yesterday, after yesterday's press briefing, I got a pretty good tour of the facilities, first-hand look, and I want to share that with you as well today. So let's see what Bill had to say today. We had that weather move through, and we did see a bump in the reservoir to the tune of about 3 feet. Well, there may be a few more yet to go. There's still, right now the inflows are exceeding the outflows. The inflows peaked at about 100,000 cubic feet per second, and that's, he calls it on the backside of the hydrologic curve. That means the inflows from this storm has peaked out and they're going down. The outflow is remaining steady at 60,000 CFS. FEMA and the FEMA and the recovery team is still on scene, and that helps everybody coordinate what are the priorities and how are we going to attack the priorities. They're basically attacking everything that they can at once, conditions permitting. But there's a few priority orders here that we'll talk about in a second. They also help, of course, figure out how much this is all going to cost. Before they feel comfortable lifting the evacuation warning for the area, a number of things have to fall into place, and a number of the redundancies at the Oroville Dam need to be restored. One of those is getting water to flow out from underneath the dam again. So the work on armoring up the emergency spillway is just about done, and again, they don't plan to use it again. I know you don't plan to use an emergency spillway into the extent that you open a gate or close a gate. There are no gates on the emergency spillway. It simply pours over. They plan on managing the water level of the reservoir such that they never have to use that emergency spillway again. They plan on keeping the water level fluctuating around the 850-foot mark as best as possible. That being said, when they get this break in the weather and inflows come down enough, the next objective they want to achieve is to clean up the debris field at the base of the main spillway. They want to make sure they have all this equipment in place beforehand, and these are all kinds of excavators mounted on barges, and they're going to float these barges into position on the Thermalito diversion pool at the base of the dam and attack this giant pile of rocks. Where is it? Right there. All these, it's not rock so much as concrete. This is all the rocks and concrete that have been blown out of the hole in the spillway and deposited down here in the Thermalito diversion pool. This is causing the water to back up. It's created yet another dam and has caused the water back here to back up. And here's the numbers on that. We got some good numbers from them today. The problem with having the water backed up in the Thermalito diversion pool is that they cannot run the electric power plant. It's flooding. It's threatening to flood the electric power plant. Crews are working full-time, scrambling to keep that power plant dry while they get this equipment into place and get the water level lowered. In front of the power plant, they need to have that water level of the Thermalito diversion pool down to 232 feet MSL. Imagine that. That's the top of that dam. The top of the main dam, is 1,300 feet. The top of the emergency spillway is 900 feet. The bottom of the dam is down to a mere 232 feet. Right now, that water level in the diversion pool is up to 254 feet. So it's 22 feet too high. 22 feet too much water right here in front of the Hyatt power plant exhaust port. A couple of concerns they have about lowering the water outflow of the main spillway down to what he calls 0Q or zero is additional erosion to the main spillway. As you turn it on and turn it off, they're afraid of cutting more erosion here in the main spillway. He also mentioned adversely affecting folks downstream by turning the water on and off. And I'm not real clear as to why that is, other than you want to keep an even strain on the levees downstream. Another reason to turn the water off is to get in there and keep inspecting, continue to continuously inspect the damaged main spillway. Here's some new pictures illustrating that they are working on all of the different assets here. This is at the head of the main spillway. There's, by the way, the gates that are being, the electric powered gates that are being powered by generator. We see hand crews with buckets literally lining the side of the spillway with rocks here, working their way down towards the main break. Now they're only going to turn that water off for a couple of days, get in there and scoop that debris field out, monitor inflows and water level very closely, and then turn the water back on and see how things perform. That's the next main objective, is to get the electric power plant going again. Get another redundant system, another way of getting water out of Oroville Reservoir. Weather ahead looks cooler. That means snow. That means good news. That means lower inflows. Hats off to the one member of the press with that really tough hardball question. Who's going to pay for this? Well, like Bill said, we're all taxpayers, and it's going to be me and you. So let's take a look and see what I found out on the scene yesterday.
That's pretty impressive. 60,000 cubic feet per second over the damaged spillway on Monday, 20 February. You can still see the diversion blocks are still in place. The lower tail race is still here. Now, earlier I called these big rocks bedrock, but more correctly, geologists would more likely term these as floaters. These rocks can come loose from there. You can see the high amount of erosion, and the whole entire spillway is diverting its flow around these big rocks here, not so much as coming down the tail end of the spillway. You get an idea of the flow down there in the Oroville, the Thermalito diversion pool, and the problem is all this debris coming down out of here has brought a bunch of logs and rocks and debris and deposited on this side of the Thermalito diversion pool and raised that water level and backed that water level up to the outlet to the Hyatt power plant up there at the base of the dam. With the water that high, they can't open the doors. They'll flood the power plant inside the base of that dam. So that's one of the reasons why they can't run the power plant. The other reason is they had to chop down the power lines over here at the emergency spillway I'll show you in a minute. And they've got to reconnect power lines to reconnect the Hyatt power plant back up to the grid. Down here, that's where the emergency spillway, while it was flowing, ended up here in the Thermalito diversion pool. And that water worked its way down from way up there, and also added a lot of debris into the diversion pool that raised the water level. One more thing I want to say about this spillway, it's hard to see from this angle, but way up there, the slope of the spillway is fairly gradual, and then it starts a steep descent down into the Thermalito diversion pool. That spillway starts bending just up above where the spillway busted. And here's what Oroville Dam and Oroville Reservoir looks like when the water is down 50 feet. So they got that much room for additional water, which is quite a bit. Remember, this is a funnel-shaped deal, so every foot you come up is a tremendous, much more greater amount of volume of water for every foot of elevation because of the slope nature of the reservoir. And that's sloped all the way around the reservoir like that. You can see way over there how shallow it gets towards the emergency spillway. But this is the main dam. moving the material. More rock piles. So here's the top of the main dam. Down there is the Hyatt powerhouse. And there's the Thermalito diversion pool that is backed up because of the debris and caused the problem with the powerhouse, the potential to flood the powerhouse because that water level is too high. So they've got the equipment on barges down there, and when the weather improves enough and they can turn off the spigot to the main busted spillway, they can get in there with the barges and the heavy equipment and clean that material out, lower that water level, get it down below the the Hyatt powerhouse, then reconnect this powerhouse to the grid. Somehow, I think they're gonna have to run this power back up this way, the opposite direction of the emergency spillway. The old tower's way over there. Then they can start flowing water through this portion of the dam. There's the inlet structure to the Hyatt powerhouse. With the slope of these tubes here, they can control the temperature of the water that proceeds through the Hyatt powerhouse by selecting water from different levels of depth of the reservoir. All that's closed off right now. Okay, we're on top of the main dam, the end of the main dam. Here's a stockpile of rock being picked up and moved. Across the spillway, there's the main busted spillway, the top of it. There's the spillway gates. And on the other side of the spillway, going to the north, is the emergency spillway where all the rock and shotcrete is getting dropped into in an effort to armor up that emergency spillway. And I can't quite get out there any further than this at this point to see that. But they have dumped a lot of material into armoring up that emergency spillway. Again, that's going to be for emergency use only. They have no intention of using that emergency spillway if they can at all avoid it, now or even in the future after they armor it. So this may very well be the permanent fix for the emergency spillway until they design a whole new system later on in the future. But regardless of what they do right now, they need to get something to get them through not only this rain season, but they're already planning on fixes to get them through next rain season. And even those fixes may not be the permanent fix. Now looking at the main spillway, that may very well be part of the control system for the gates to the main spillway. And these generators may very well be your backup redundant source of power. I'm not sure. Your backup redundant source of power to operate the main gates to the main spillway. If that's the case, I actually feel pretty good about using these for backup generators. I mean, they're right out here in the open where you can swap them out if you need to. Still see some of the high tension lines down in the valley below. And you can make out the remains of the access road. Oh yeah, and there's the edge. There's that last big gully right in front of that yellow truck. Now here's the inlet to the spillway, and the spillway right there. Now see this channel? See that turbulent flow of water right there? As the water level lowers, they don't want to run the water too fast through this channel in the spillway as the water gets lower for fear of scouring this channel and digging up these rocks and messing it up. So as the water level lowers, they need to actually reduce the flow through that spillway to avoid damaging, scouring this channel, the inlet. Now back over here to the north is the parking lot, and there is the emergency spillway, the backside of the emergency spillway. See, the water level, of course, is way down below it. So the fear was if this emergency spillway tipped over, you would just get that much water pouring over it. However, as we saw the way things eroded, if that much water poured over and that erosion got going, that erosion would dig its way back and dig its way back and dig its way all the way down through here, through scouring, and could potentially release much more water, if not most of the water, out of the entire reservoir. Meanwhile, the main dam just remains in fine shape. Besides the emergency spillway and erosion over there, you back the water up and it starts flooding this parking lot area, and that parking lot is just laying on top of dirt. It's not down to bedrock like I believe this emergency spillway is down to bedrock. That starts eroding. That could provide another route for the water to escape the reservoir. Thus, the emergency evacuation that they had back at the beginning of this whole event. Again, remember, the area just remains under an advisory. Keep your eyes and ears open.